Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Zaimah Alana binti Zainuddin and my metric number is 27296. I am from Group 6. I will present to you the effects of COVID-19 pandemic towards micro, small and medium enterprises (MSMEs) in Malaysia. First, this is my table of contents. I will explain about our introduction, point of writing, current situation, data and findings, discussion, and conclusion. For introduction, COVID-19 has resulted in rapid and major changes in the way MSMEs operate. Small businesses around the world have already seen significant changes in consumer habits, customer behavior, product distribution, and demand. In Malaysia, movement control order was implemented. Lockdowns and other movement restrictions prevent important persons and employees from working. Other parts of the economy also experienced severe job losses, resulting in a significant decline in demand. Several other supplier companies have gone bankrupt. Because of the uncertainty about the pandemic's possible route, many individuals and companies have reduced their spending. Also, the relatively large long term of what will happen afterwards that impacts both consumers and firms. Based on previous experience, when lockdowns end, the recovery pace that follows many result in a short-term surge in economic activity in the weeks after deconfinement, but the shopping binge is unlikely to last. Many predetermined production and demand patterns, as well as distribution and customer preferences, have changed in ways that have yet to be fully quantified. The recovery does not imply a recurrence of the previous normal pace. It may imply a new normal that is easier for certain MSMEs and more difficult for others. The total effect of COVID-19 on the MSME sector is difficult to estimate because it varies depending on the patient's recovery and the infection rate. The present travel limitations imposed in various locations as well as governmental reactions in various nations. Comprehensive real-time statistics around the world on the state of the MSME sector are hard to come by, but the issue of COVID-19 has attracted attention and encouraged investigation to MSMEs. Policy reactions from various branches of government addressing various challenges involved MSMEs are required. Policymakers must ensure that two important concerns related to competition policy and MSMEs market access are not ignored. Next, point of writing. First, to explain the importance of MSMEs in Malaysia during COVID-19. Malaysia MSMEs in particular have provided various types of employment opportunities to all segments of the local community. Thus, when there are vast employment opportunities in the country, this has reduced the problem of unemployment that occurs in Malaysia. In fact, the existence of MSMEs actually help the country's economy and finance to grow. Furthermore, MSMEs industry in Malaysia are important in paving the way for innovation, study, and research using locally available materials. This situation can not only improve skills in the use of existing resources but also attract people by introducing new production in the eyes of the outside community. As a result of the competitive and creative attitude in the MSMEs industry, this situation has helped the country to increase its existing income. Therefore, when the COVID-19 pandemic occurred, this affected the decline in the MSMEs industry and at the same time affected the national economy. This is because many communities in MSMEs lost their jobs and had to quit due to insufficient production costs. Widespread unemployment and the downturn in the MSMEs industry have led to a collapse in the country's existing sources of income. So it is clear that MSMEs can play an important role even during the COVID-19 pandemic. Second, to search how government handles the situation when MSMEs impacted. During the third wave of COVID-19 transmission, this condition had a negative impact on MSMEs. However, this situation can be saved with the government's role in taking action to help the MSME industry continue to operate. To overcome this problem, the government have provided 3 types of stimulus measures totaling 260 billion ringgit Malaysia were launched as part of the Prihatin, the economic stimulus package Prihatin Rakyat. In this way, it can assist MSMEs in their operations, thereby aiding in the retention of their employees. This has the potential to reduce the nation's current growing unemployment rate. The government also had previously announced an increase in allocation to the Special Assistance Facility SRF to help more MSMEs affected by the COVID-19 outbreak. In addition, the government may introduce or create approach classes for digital and recovery-related classes in businesses. This is because we do not really sure when COVID-19 will disappear. Thus, the government can develop or improve facilities for these visual operations and transactions to support company operations, particularly MSMEs. The government can also reduce bureaucratic processes such as the 6-month suspension of the EPF, which requires the approval of a special committee. A comprehensive deferral should be provided regardless of the size of the business to provide savings to the business in terms of working capital, time savings, and limited use of resources. Therefore, this is good initiative for MSMEs if the government can participate to help them with the help extended. This situation can help MSMEs recover even if it is slow during the COVID-19 outbreak. Third, to show the challenge faced by MSMEs during of the pandemic COVID-19. During the MCO period, beginning in March 2020, many businesses sectors were affected by difficulties in sourcing resources for production and declining demand in the market, including the MSMEs industry. Thus, various challenges had to be faced by MSMEs during this COVID-19 pandemic. The most significant direct effect of the spread of COVID-19 on the respondents' business was the reduction in the revenue compared to the before the implementation of the movement control or the MCO. The decline in average annual sales in 2020 is estimated to reach 45.1% compared to the average annual sales in 2019 due to the shortage and absence of customers as well as limited business activities. This situation can also indirectly contribute to the increase in unemployment among MSMEs entrepreneurs in Malaysia, as most of them have to close their businesses and lose their jobs. Therefore, it is undeniable that MSME entrepreneurs, especially youths who have just ventured into this field, have faced great challenges during the COVID-19 pandemic. Fourth, to discuss the actions taken by MSMEs during COVID-19. MSMEs need to review their parallel businesses, capital, and relevant. This includes taking into account the customer's new budget and product offerings as well as changes in customer habits before and during the COVID-19 pandemic. Enterprises need to explore new markets, new customer segments, introduce new products, redesign packaging size and quantities that are appropriate and relevant to new markets, as well as determine what consumers want. Thus, MSMEs entrepreneurs also need to be smart to find approaches and changes towards new technologies, digitalization, and online business to reduce costs and save time and resources. With the current issue of the COVID-19 pandemic affecting customers buying patterns more online, it is good for MSMEs to start entering the e-commerce market. Furthermore, MSMEs entrepreneurs also need to find methods and change towards business digitalization and methods of business recovery that can be used by considering how MSMEs entrepreneurs can collaborate to provide customers with better services. As a result, it has the potential to strengthen future revenue or income growth for the business. Therefore, with the active actions of MSMEs to change their business patterns, this situation can definitely help them during the COVID-19 pandemic. Next, I will explain about current situation. First, decline in sales and profit. MSMEs experienced a decline in demand due to the closure of business operations during the MCO period. Numerous MSMEs businesses were unable to cover their operational expenditure due to a decrease in sales and revenues that leads to business closures in the long run. Multiple MCO in Malaysia previously have been affecting MSMEs as they cannot run their business during those times, especially business of fresh food based and physical only business. Next, loss of employment. Employees were only permitted to work from their home. The lockdown had a negative impact on the economy because of the movement of people and the necessity for them to work from home. MSMEs workers, particularly those in manufacturing and traditional service industries, will not be able to work from home due to the nature of their jobs. MSME sector is currently dealing with the most difficult circumstances possible due to a lack of available workers and loss in employment. Third, supply chain disruptions. The release of curfews and movement restrictions will enhance the harm to supply chain operations. A significant portion of the industry and services are dependent on supplies from China. As a result, smaller firms will pay a greater share of the increased costs caused by protectionist policies in these industries. MSMEs businesses typically have relationship with a smaller number of suppliers, make them more susceptible to be risk associated with supply chain contagion. Lastly, be more creative. Since COVID-19, people are always using information technology to know about current issues and situations besides for online shopping. Online shopping platforms are getting more recognition, and this is an inspiration for all MSMEs to also pursue in online business as an initiative for them, besides also for promoting tools. Promoting a business using social media is really helping in making the business to get more recognition. Okay, next, I will present about data and findings. Findings of this study indicated that one of the effects of COVID-19 pandemic towards MSMEs in Malaysia is the shortage of cash flow to sustain a business. Failure to sustain adequate amounts of cash flow is one of the factors that contribute to business failure. Due to the necessity of cash for loan repayment, payment distribution, and paying suppliers and staff, businesses that are suffering from weak cash flow do not exhibit much in the early phases of closure. Okay, you can see the chart. Based on the chart above, MSME's GDP growth in Malaysia has registered negative 7.3% in 2020, which is during the COVID-19 pandemic in Malaysia. That is shown by the light blue line. Okay, the Movement Control Order (MCO), which the government enforced in March 2020, was the cause of the drop in the MSME's GDP. According to the Age Market, around 91% of MSME's business in Malaysia have experienced lower sales of more than 50% in business performance, as they are forced to close the firm temporarily or limit their operation during the implementation of MCO. Additionally, 1.2 million jobs have been lost as a result. At least 150,000 MSMEs closed their doors since the outbreak. Despite all of the government's attempts to support MSMEs in maintaining their operations, more than 77% of MSMEs have not yet applied for special assistance funds because they are concerned about having high gearing, since the majority of them already have previous loans. The ability to repay the debt and the risk of bankruptcy will be impacted by the economy over the following 6 months. The majority of businesses owners adopt alternative business practices, such as encouraging their staff to take advantage of yearly leave or starting layoff. Next, impact on MSMEs employment. MSMEs contribute significantly to the country's economic growth, specifically in terms of its contribution toward the GDP and employment. Despite being the core of Malaysia's economics, 70% of MSMEs face 50% declining business after a week of the MCO. This is a figure about summary of different impacts on MSMEs sales and employment in early and late 2020. The result of the data shows that MSMEs, which had an impact of COVID-19 in early of 2020 in terms of sales and losing some employees, slowly regained their pace and started to recover to some revenue in sales and rehiring permanent and temporary workers in late 2020. Nonetheless, the findings also indicate that most MSMEs do not prepare enough for making up the sales for the future and are unwilling to rehire the permanent and non-permanent employees after pandemic due to the expectation of a potential reappearance of pandemic in the future. Next, I will present about discussion. From the findings obtained in the previous section, there is a very significant problem whose impact will have to be borne by MSMEs in Malaysia during the outbreak of the COVID-19, which began in early 2020. Basically, the problem faced is because during the outbreak of COVID-19, most of the MSMEs were unable to conduct their business as usual. In terms of profit, of course, they will not earn as before, but it not only involves the profit factor. Taking seriously the situations faced by MSMEs, the government has taken a number of measures that can help them to reduce the impact received as a result of COVID-19 outbreak. In this discussion, there are only 3 significant steps taken to be discussed. First, the additional fund of RM 130 million for the MSME sector. Second, the provision of a capital grant of RM 1,000 ringgit and tax exemption on MSMEs. The additional fund of RM 130 million is the latest initiative implemented by the government in an effort to revive the business of MSMEs affected by COVID-19. These funds are channeled to MSMEs under the Informal and Microfinance Scheme (SPIM). The initiative of this scheme is channeled through Tekun Nasional, which offers financing worth RM 10,000 ringgit without profit charge and moratorium exemption for 1 year to any MSMEs eligible to receive it. With the granting of this scheme, MSMEs will continue to remain significant contributing to the country's economic expansion and entrepreneurial development as this sector is the core of the nation's innovation and transformation. Evidence that can be taken to show that MSMEs are important to the national economy is in 2020, MSMEs contribute to 38.2% of gross domestic product and 13.5% of the country's exports. Therefore, with the additional large amount of funds and various initiatives framed by the government that will be able to help to accelerate the recovery of the sector of MSMEs. Next, in an effort to reactivate the economy after the COVID-19 outbreak, initiative that also implemented by the government is the provision of capital grants worth Rm1,000 to individual MSMEs and Rm3,000 to corporate businesses. This capital grant initiative is aimed at giving an injection to restart their businesses after the domestic COVID-19 cases showed a decline. The granting of these capital grants takes into account the entrepreneurs of the MSMEs themselves. This is because during the widespread of COVID-19 case, they used their savings to cover the needs of their respective households, which caused the capital for them to restart the business decrease or there were no more savings. Therefore, with the provision of capital grants, it is the right thing to do to revitalize the country's economy and promote the capital cycle. Lastly, tax exemptions. Tax exemptions on MSMEs have also been implemented. In the implementation of this initiative, the MSME sector was exempted from taxation for 4 to 6 months after they restarted their businesses. Not only that, for MSMEs who rent, their rental costs are only borne by the government for the same period. Significantly, this initiative is aimed at rehabilitating their businesses that have had to close for a long period of time and easing their burden from thinking about the other effects that will be received as a result of not being able to pay rent. Lastly, conclusion. The collaboration of the government and MSMEs itself can ensure the uninterrupted operation of MSMEs in Malaysia. Despite the difficulties, MSMEs in Malaysia have high expectations to make progress and contribute to the overall growth of the Malaysian economy. MSMEs are extremely important to the economy of Malaysia. They are responsible for about 40% of the country's gross domestic product and they employ roughly 60% of the country's labor force. So, preparing both short-term and long-term solutions is a straightforward method for adapting to this pandemic and dealing with it.